A good morning to you. It is Saturday, the 25th day of June 2016. Trust that you had a wonderful weekend. Glad that you're watching KTN News. Hope that you're on to a good start to your weekend. You're watching Weekend Express with me, Sharon Momanyi. Welcome to the program. Now, the chairperson of the Disputes Tribunal in the opposition Orange Democratic Movement Party, Edwin Sifuna, has staged an internal coup and declared himself ODM Secretary General, claiming Ababu Namwamba has absconded duty. The move comes 3 days after embattled ODM Secretary General Ababu and National Vice Chairperson Paul Otuoma accused party leader Raila Odinga and Chairperson John Mbadi of sidelining them in major decisions involving the party. Patrick Amimo reports.
At Orange House, the chairperson of ODM's Disputes Tribunal, Edwin Sifuna, converged with some party youth.
Why are you not asking them?
On Tuesday, ODM Secretary General Ababu Namwamba and National Vice Chairperson Paul Otuoma led 7 lawmakers from Western Kenya in accusing ODM leader Raila Odinga and National Chairman John Mbadi of sidelining them in major decisions involving the party. Namwamba and Otuoma warned that they should not be taken for granted since they were neither guests in ODM nor slaves of anyone, adding that they have got options.
Hajapewa ile tunasema support ya kutosha kuweza kutekeleza kazi yake. Na ndio saa nyingine utaona mtu anataka kuuliza maswali kwamba uko wapi. Wakati mlikuwa mnapanga hiyo vitu ndio ungeuliza kwamba maoni ya Secretary General ni nini? Si ati wewe uende kwenye street alafu useme ati Secretary General hajakuwa kwenye street. Kwa sababu yeye ni kiongozi, lazima pia ahusishwe.
I have never had time to respond to what I consider to be idle talk.
And Sifuna had a quick fix to the dispute revolving around the powerful office of the Secretary General.
From today, I, Edwin Sifuna, is the Secretary General of the party, Orange Democratic Movement. It's not as if we are throwing anyone out. That office is vacant. It has been vacant for the past 18 months, and we are only here to fill a gap because it is necessary and we are running out of time as a party.
Sifuna took charge of Namwamba's office. But in a quick rejoinder, ODM's Executive Director Odworo Ngwen dismissed Sifuna's takeover, saying there was no vacancy in the office of the Secretary General. Ongwen urged party members, supporters and the general public to ignore what he described as unconstitutional antics.
Well, there is something called absence without leave, even in military parlance. And if you have followed what the military do, a junior officer has every right to relieve a commander of his command, even a general, if he deserts his post. So we are saying that at this particular juncture in time, seeing that we are only about 12 months away from the election, we cannot afford for somebody to sit in an office that he does not want to, carry out the duties of.
Namwamba is out of the country. Ongwen says the party has a constitution and procedures guided by the Political Parties Act, which all members must adhere to.
We will wait for NEC to meet whenever they will meet, and the decision of a party on the decision that we have taken today as youth will be reached at that particular point, but we expect that the NEC will be endorsing the position that we have taken today.
In October 2014, then ODM's Executive Director Margaret Langat was attacked and ejected from the CORD parliamentary group in the presence of the coalition leadership. The rowdy group accused Margaret of being a Jubilee mole and supporting a push by younger MPs to take over some positions in the ODM party. A week later, in early November, then ODM's Director of Political Affairs, Wafula Buke, claimed he had taken over Margaret's position in acting capacity after Margaret failed to report to work. Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, who was the outgoing Secretary General, dismissed the move. On Tuesday, Namwamba dismissed reports in social media that he was planning to ditch ODM and join forces with Deputy President William Ruto ahead of the 2017 polls. Patrick Amimo, KTN News.
And as the coup was taking place in Nairobi, CORD leader Raila Odinga was in Malindi in Kilifi County, where he condemned Interior Cabinet Secretary Joseph Nkaiseri and NCIC Chair Francis Kaparo following the arrests, detention and subsequent charging of 8 MPs on grounds of propagating hate speech. Raila says it was wrong for the government to deny the elected leaders bail and locking them up for 4 nights. He claims the action was part of a scheme by the government to suppress the opposition, which he says is bound to fail. Duncan Khayamba reports.
As promised, CORD leader Raila Odinga has kicked off a series of rallies dubbed homecomings for the 8 members of parliament, now popularly known as Pangani 6 and Muthaiga 2, arrested, detained and charged before court last week. On Friday, he was in Malindi town for a solidarity rally with Kilifi women representative Aisha Jumwa, where he tore into interior CS and the NCIC.
Tunataka kuambia Bwana Kaiseri, Kenya si kambi ya jeshi. Wakenya si wafungwa ya wanajeshi. Na vile vile Bwana Kaparo, pia Bwana Kaparo, usitishi wa Kenya. Uliza Nyayo. Nyayo alijaribu na lishindwa, sivyo? Sivyo?
Odinga castigated government's action to detain the 8 MPs for 3 days, terming the move as retrogressive.
Kuchukua hawa wabunge 8 na kuwashika na kukataza hata bond au bail, ati watakuja kuinterfere na investigations. Hii ni dhuluma ambayo haina kifani. Manake wabunge hawezi kutoroka. Wabunge wakisikwa, wakipeleka mahakamani, wakiwachwa, wakisema rudi siku fulani atarudi. Lakini sasa jamaa hali yao haikuwa kufanya uchunguzi. Haja yao ilikuwa kutisha hao watu, kunyamazisha wabunge wasiongee.
As the MPs took cue from the master, also firing their salvos at the government.
Sorengo angekuja, hali yangu ingekuwa hatarini, labda ningefungwa huko Guantanamo Bay leo, hata singekuwa hapa Kenya. Nimekuta magari ya polisi karibu 20 ambayo inapiga chui sema jamani, nimeiba mali ya nani?
Hatutasimama maovu na ukiritimba katika nchi hii ya kitutawala, na tutaendelea kusema, tutasema.
Mumeona watu wakiuana huko Mhoroni, lakini hatujaona mtu yeyote akikimbia kule kuangalia ni nini watu wanapigania huko Mhoroni. Where is Kaiseri right now? IG Boineta kwa wapi watu wakiuana huko Mhoroni? Pahali wanahitajika hawako.
The opposition leaders have vowed not to relent in their quest to evict IEBC commissioners from office.
Wanawake wao wamevaa uniform ya Jubilee. Kwa Jubilee wao watu 12 na sisi tuko watu 11.
The harassments, the threats, the trumped up charges are not going to intimidate us into silence.
Pamoja na msamaha wa Raila Amolo Odinga kwa Moses Kuria, tunataka maneno ya Moses Kuria yachunguzwe kwa kina. Hatutaachilia hivi hivi.
On Sunday, Odinga will lead yet another homecoming rally for Kitutu Masaba lawmaker Timothy Bosire. Then on Monday, he will be in Busia County to lead the same for area women representative Florence Mtua. Duncan Hemba, KTN News.
Now, in a move that has shocked the world, the United Kingdom Friday morning, in a vote, decided to exit the European Union, ending a 43-year marriage with a region that has seen it engage in lower trade tariffs with 27 other countries of the European Union. The move, termed as one that will affect generations to come, immediately drew in varied reactions, among them the immediate resignation of Prime Minister David Cameron. Timothy Otieno reports.
The 24th of June 2016 will go down into the annals of history as a day that nearly 65 million residents of the United Kingdom changed the trajectory of their destiny in a vote in which slightly over half of that population participated in. The vote to exit, by no means an emphatic one, but with over 2 million more votes cast against a Remain option, Scotland, England, Wales and Northern Ireland sealed their fate over a matter that had plagued the nation for well over 2 years. The implication of the vote denting a 6-year career for Conservative Party leader and British Prime Minister David Cameron, who led the Remain campaign into a loss, resulting in his resignation shortly after.
I held nothing back. I was absolutely clear about my belief that Britain is stronger, safer and better off inside the European Union. And I made clear the referendum was about this and this alone, not the future of any single politician, including myself.
Cameron's imminent end to his reign at the helm of British politics, coupled with the United Kingdom now ceasing to be a member of the European Union, would send a spiral effect, with the pound dropping significantly at the global market, the worst in nearly 30 years.
People want to take their country back. They want to have independence in a sense, and you see it with Europe, all over Europe. You're going to have more than just, in my opinion, more than just what happened last night. You're going to have, I think, many other cases where they want to take their borders back, they want to take their monetary back, they want to take a lot of things back. They want to be able to have a country again.
Closer home, concerns about how the exit would affect trade and partnership with Britain continue to somewhat remain quelled, with a wait-and-see approach suggested by those concerned.
What now happens to the trade deals that countries like Kenya have with the EU, given the exit of Britain from the EU bloc?
Right. What will happen when we start to renegotiate our exit is that we will have to find new ways of expressing that partnership between us. But for the moment, from today to tomorrow, nothing changes for Kenyan businesses.
The United Kingdom has been a member of the Union since the 1st of January 1973, and her exit to the world's most economically powerful regional bloc is seen to likely affect the economy of the fifth world's largest economy, as well as the immigration policy that largely sent its people to the polls. The United Kingdom will likely present a formal request to exit the Union come June the 28th, when the European Union member states meet for a summit, but no doubt the consequences of Friday's vote may take years to be fully realized. Timothy Otieno, KTN News.
The National Treasury has assured the business community that there is no cause for alarm regarding the UK's exit from the European Union. Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich conceded that whereas the move has consequences, Kenya had enough foreign exchange reserves to weather the storm. Britain voted in a referendum on Friday to leave the EU, an outcome that prompted British Prime Minister David Cameron to announce his resignation. Although the shilling is stable, Rotich said Kenya is monitoring the movement of the dollar and euro very carefully, and any eventuality will be dealt with accordingly.
It's too early to make an assessment at the moment. Of course, the currencies, the sterling pounds began to weaken. A weakening of the sterling pound means a strengthening of the Kenya shilling in a way. Vis-a-vis the sterling pound, so there are impacts on that with respect to our exports to UK and imports from UK, so in terms of the goods, the flow of goods, and so we are monitoring, just to assure you that the government and the country has sufficient resources, forex exchange resources that they can use to stabilize any impact that may create, that the financial flows may create.
The United Kingdom faces an uncertain future after Friday's vote by Britain to divorce from the European Union. Hours later, Prime Minister David Cameron announced that he will be stepping down in 3 months. Now, Scotland's First Minister has said a second independence referendum is highly likely for the country, despite voting in favour of the UK staying in the EU by 62% to 38%. Our reporter Zinzi Kibiku has the details.
The referendum held on Thursday would seal the divorce in a 43-year-old marriage between Britain and the European Union. With the votes in, it was time to cheer for the Leave opponents. To Leave vote won by 52% to 48% to secure what some had called Brexit. The referendum turnout was 71%, with more than 30 million people voting. It was the highest turnout in a UK-wide vote since 1992 general election. And with the result came the resignation of Prime Minister David Cameron.
I will do everything I can as Prime Minister to steady the ship over the coming weeks and months. But I do not think it would be right for me to try to be the captain that steers our country to its next destination. But in my view, we should aim to have a new Prime Minister in place by the start of the Conservative Party conference in October.
United Kingdom, made of 4 different countries, voted differently. England voted strongly for Brexit by 53.4%, as did Wales. Scotland and North Ireland both backed staying in the EU, while Scotland standing at 62%, while 55% in North Ireland voted to remain. Scotland and North Ireland were not happy with the final outcome. The future of a United Kingdom now in limbo.
It's quite shocking. I think it's the worst thing that's happened to this country since 1979 when Margaret Thatcher.
Dreadful decision, dreadful.
A survey showing an age breakdown of voting has prompted many young people to blame the Brexit vote on older generations. The survey has prompted an outpouring of disappointment on social media among younger voters. While the value of the pound to take a significant hit in the medium term, it suddenly fell sharply as it emerged that the UK was to leave the EU.
Inevitably, there'll be a period of uncertainty and adjustment following this result. But as the Prime Minister said just this morning, there'll be no initial change in the way our people can travel, in the way our goods can move, or the way our services can be sold.
That is likely to mean buying goods or services from other countries will become more expensive. Inflation will therefore be higher, and goods being sold to other countries will become cheaper for the buyers.
I will attend the European Council next week to explain the decision the British people have taken and my own decision.
So, what's next? UK Parliament will be meeting on Monday to table a way forward for David Cameron stepping down. Laws will have to be passed on how the UK will leave the EU within 2 years of negotiating terms of exit. And next week, all 28 EU heads, including David Cameron, will be meeting in Brussels to digest this move. Zinzi Kibiku, KTN News.
Here in Kenya, the British High Commissioner Nick Haley sought to calm the storm with an assurance that trade and diplomatic ties between the UK and the East African region. The Commissioner was speaking earlier yesterday at KTN News in an interview on the program Worldview. Take a look.
The sterling pound has plummeted tremendously since the vote came out. Where does this place the country? And of course, with the kind of trade relations it has with very many countries in the world.
And this is a big decision. There's no hiding that. And it's quite natural that after that big decision, there are a lot of thoughts and adjustments that need to be made and things that need to be thought through. And we don't have all the answers to those things yet. They need to be worked through over the coming months as we go into that negotiation. But as I said, I think it's important also to be clear that we went into this referendum as a strong economy, probably the strongest major economy in Europe, and we come out of it with the same strength. We went into it with a strong financial system, a strong set of trading relationships, and we come out of it with that same strength. Also here in Kenya, we come out of it, as I've said, with the same arrangements for trade tomorrow and the day after as we had yesterday and the day before. So there is no disorderly unraveling here. There is a process of adjustment, and I understand that there's some uncertainty over how that will evolve because we haven't worked that all out yet, and it will be a negotiation. But there is no break here. There is a continuity for the time being of the arrangements that we have and of the strength of our partnership. And we very much intend, whatever the new arrangements are, to make sure that partnership is as strong in the future.
So going forward, what are we expecting in terms of, say, foreign policy? Of course, we have the issue of work permits that so many people are concerned going forward, even with this level of uncertainty that we have. What should we expect?
Well, on work permits within the EU, as I've said, that will have to be part of the renegotiation, and the government, my government, will have to take a view as to what position it wants to take, and its European partners will have to take a view as well. As I say, I think it's too early to say on that yet. I'm still hoping that Victor Wanyama will come to Spurs, because Spurs is my team, and I'm looking forward to getting some more Kenyan fans for that. That may be outside the scope of your show, but I don't think this is going to change. Perhaps that example illustrates it, the UK's position as an international hub, because we have all these connections worldwide. We are so proud of those connections, of our openness to the world, of our status as a trading nation, and I think that's going to continue.
All right. And just to bring it back, of course, to the region, the East African community, we also have a block here of the East African community, and that has looked at the EU as a role model, per se, if I could put it like that. And there had been partnerships. We have the economic partnerships agreements that have been signed between the East African community and the European Union. There's worry and concerns among the business community on what would happen to such agreements now that the UK has left the EU. How do we quell such talks and such concerns?
Well, as I've said, the UK hasn't left the EU yet. So the UK has taken a decision to leave the EU and to negotiate the arrangements under which it leaves. But it's not from yesterday to today that we've left. So we're still part of that trading arrangement. We still have this economic partnership agreement on the table, which we hope will be signed very soon by Kenya, by the other East African nations, and which will build that trading partnership even further, which allows a very, very high level of access to the UK and European market for Kenyan products. Now, clearly, as the UK negotiates its way out of the EU, much will then depend on what arrangements we make with the rest of Europe as to how we transition from the current arrangements to whatever new arrangements are put in place. I really can't speculate on what those will be yet, but as I've said, I know how important it is to my government that whatever we do, we are able to have the framework in which we can maintain our very strong relationship with this region, because it really matters to us, and it matters also so much to the British companies who work here, who employ so many Kenyans.
Do we expect this to affect the trade relationships that the UK has with various countries, say Kenya, but the UK, most of the tourists we get, a huge number come from the UK. We also export flowers to the UK.
As we renegotiate our arrangements, that some of that framework will change, some of the way that the rules are expressed will change. But I find it very hard to envisage a situation in which the strength of the trading relationship is compromised. So I feel confident. I mean, I'm speculating now because this has to be decided down the line, but I feel very confident that we will find a way to make sure that Kenyan companies can trade with the UK in as strong and as close a way as they do at the moment, because as I say, that's very important to Kenyan companies and to British businesses based here in Kenya.
Now, with the passage of the new vote that Britain exits from the European Union, football and sports will be greatly affected by the Brexit. The repercussions will be felt all over the world. That the Barclays Premier League is one of the best and admired leagues in the world is not in doubt. However, for a player to join the league, it will be more difficult, since one will have to navigate through more hurdles than they previously did.
The vote to leave the European Union will have far-reaching effects on the Premier League. Brexit is expected to compromise the competitiveness of the Premier League. Richard Scudamore, the Premier League executive chairman, together with all 20 Premier League clubs, voted for the coveted league to remain with Europe, arguing that exiting will make the league non-competitive, as that will lock out some of the best players to the league.
Travel the world like we do, being welcomed because of the fact that we are open for business, open for discussion, open for cooperation. There's an openness about the Premier League, which I think it would be completely incongruous if we were to take the opposite position.
After the vote, what is expected to happen is that the sports bodies will now look at the existing rules and decide whether to emulate what they already have in relation to European nationals, according to the British High Commissioner to Kenya, Nick Haley.
That process has a formal part to it. That takes 2 years once the article in the treaty is triggered. He wants, though, to leave to his successor the decision to launch that process formally and to spend the time between now and the autumn, when he intends to go, preparing for that negotiation.
However, in the long run, Premier League clubs will be forced to pay more for players. Clubs will be limited to hiring higher caliber players from highly FIFA-ranked EU countries. Others feel the vote will enhance Britain's talents by curbing the number of foreign footballers in the top leagues. Introducing quotas for English footballers has long been a dream of various FA chairmen, but made impossible by EU law. Leaving the European Union will, however, not affect the country's participation in European recognized championships like the UEFA Champions League, since they are competed under the continental umbrella.
Now, CAM has returned to the Kisumu-Nyando border after 3 days of clashes that left 3 people dead and hundreds of residents displaced and houses burnt. According to the residents, there is still fear of attack from their neighboring community, and leaders are now urging the government to deploy more security personnel. Government spokesman Eric Kiraithe has, however, blamed leadership wrangles among the members of the county assemblies as the main trigger to the cross-border clashes.
Hali ni ya wasiwasi kwa sababu hawa jamaa ni kutime watu. Kazi yao ni kutime tu watu, unaona? Wanakuja kwako, nia yao sio kuiba. Wanakuja wanakuua. Na saa zingine uko na ng'ombe na wanaacha na wanakuua na wanaenda.
I'm asking the government of Kenya. Since this problem has been with us for so long, it cannot be that there's no solution. One solution, we need a strong anti-stock theft unit in the boundaries of Nandi and Kisumu County.
The concern of the government is that at the MCA level, there are some areas of leadership they have not yet woken up to. We appreciate the efforts from the 2 governors. Yesterday, the governor of Kisumu County was on the ground, and his presence has assisted security services in a very big way. As we encourage that approach, we urge the leaders, because some of these counties are very big, even before the governor gets into the scene, there should be often forums between these elected leaders. Let them put together even those people who opposed them and all the leadership at that ward level, at the county rep level, to move so that they can foster social stability, they can protect the economic development, and ensure that where the Kenyan families are, they continue being self-reliant.
Now, conservationists in the Amboseli-Kulu ecosystem are raising concern over yet another case of human-wildlife conflict. An elephant, fondly known as Tim, was found by conservationist David Bates and his team of rangers at Kimana Sanctuary, Kajiado County. Tim is said to be one of Kenya's oldest, most studied and greatest tuskers. The KWS vets treated him at Amboseli, and he is much better now. Dorcas Wangira has the story.
There are tuskers and then there's Tim. Amboseli National Park's Tim is one of the world's biggest tuskers. Wildlife Direct records that Tim was born in 1969, a witness of all the 4 ruling regimes, a grandchild of another well-known elephant in Amboseli, Teresia. At 14, Tim left his larger family to be with his male cousins and decided to be friendly, photogenic and polite. He survived droughts and the peaks of poaching in the 1980s. Conservationists posit that he could live to be 75, that is if poachers don't kill him for his majestic tusks. But poachers are not the only ones baying for him. In 2014, the Wildlife Direct Board found him with fresh sore wounds on his back. He did not need any veterinary intervention and even thought it was not clear what caused his wound. It was later said to be a poacher's spear. Tim was found hurt again, this time wounded on the forehead, the spear wound going through the pinnae of his large ear. Yet another elephant at the center of human-wildlife conflict in the Amboseli-Chulu-Tsavo ecosystem. David Bates, a conservationist, together with Sidayo Leng Rangers, found him sauntering near the Kimana Sanctuary with a huge bleeding wound, spear protruding. Bates affirms it was local farmers who did it. Their fear had been that the spear was poisoned. KWS arrived a day later and the vets attended to the bull.
They attacked him, and from that point where the conflict took place, now he was injured, and so he was trying to escape to a place that was peaceful and where he knew he was safe and protected.
Naona kwamba ile corridor imebaki katikati yetu na mashamba ya upande wa juu kuelekea Amboseli ni zaidi ya chini ya mita 300 peke yake.
But there is a genesis for the conflict, the human settlement and intense farming on elephant corridors on the Amboseli-Kuli ecosystem. It's no longer a question of who found who here or who owns this land. Farmers who settled here say they bought this land legitimately and are thus entitled. And since elephants don't speak in words, they keep migrating and using this route, destroying what hinders them, and eat the crop. In 2015, an elephant killed 2 people in Amboseli. This triggered a massive demonstration at the Emali-Loitoktok Road. It was only after KWS tracked down the elephant and killed it that the demonstration stopped.
Sio kuachilia watu wetu wamalizwe na wanyama wa pori.
Mashamba imeliwa, water dams imeharibiwa na wanyama. Mambo ya mfereji ya maji imekatakatwa na wanyama.
It's a delicate balance for KWS when it comes to compensation for human life and crops. It is clear in principle but not in practice. Human life and wildlife and the ecosystem still in conflict, one that urgently needs to be addressed. KWS says Tim is well and out of danger. He could live to his full potential in 2045. But can he survive another attempt on his life? Dorcas Wangira, KTN News.
Now, on Thursday morning, a team of 5 justices of the Constitutional Court converged to begin hearing the main petition where the Attorney General is seeking a court order to ban Dr. Kizza Besigye's defiance campaigns. However, the justices adjourned the hearing of the petition, saying that it would be unfair to hear the petition without Besigye in court. According to Besigye's lawyer, Ladislaus Rwakafuzi, Besigye could not appear in court for the hearing of the petition because the court registrar did not serve prison authorities with a production warrant. Besigye is currently incarcerated in Luzira prison after being accused of treason. Here is Solomon Sarwanja with a story Besigye is running with Ugandan authorities.
Is he under arrest or not?
He has been arrested several times since 2001 when he expressed his political ambitions. Charged in courts of law 46 times, and he is still counting. Former presidential candidate Dr. Kizza Besigye's court battles are well chronicled in the letter that he penned to the Chief Justice of Uganda, Bat Katurebe, on the 30th of May 2016. In the letter, Besigye laments about the abuse of his rights and mistreatment while in court, calling for the interventions of Bat Katurebe to sweep the temples of justice clean. Besigye has been in and out of court during his political struggles, with the latest appearance at Kasangati Magistrates Court for disobeying lawful orders. Just last week, Besigye was in Nakawa Court battling with the charges of treason. Today, he was expected at the Constitutional Court before Justice Stephen Kavma on the case of defiance, although he failed to turn up and the case was adjourned. But reading beyond the legalities and the court battles, how do these consistent court cases affect Besigye's political life and struggles? Robert Chirunda is a senior lawyer, also a political analyst, who has kept a keen eye on Besigye's political career. He says that it has helped transform him from the person of Besigye into the Besigye ideology.
Besigye has gone from being an individual to a phenomenon. So there are those who don't believe in the politics of Dr. Kizza Besigye. But there are those who study the idea of Dr. Kizza Besigye, the phenomenon that is Besigyeism. And you've seen even the man evolve. He didn't use the caught-up-in language. Then he was believed to be militant and aggressive. You could see he was struggling to contain the man that he has now become, or to contain the man that he once was, to fit within the man that he has now become. A mellow, calm person who appeals to reason.
Through his political lens, Chirunda opines that these consistent cases have helped Dr. Besigye expose the weaknesses in the court system. Wherever Besigye is, the media follows. And to Chirunda, it is these appearances in the different court sessions, which are widely covered by both the national and international media, which keeps him alive in the population.
There are those who believe that he is the only courageous Ugandan who has the guts to be in that dock and stand for what he believes to be what is right. You see? So those are very different reasons, but every time that your camera rolls and shoots at his face entering that prison van, there are those who were in his class at medical school who say, but this guy was a brilliant surgeon. There are those with whom he was in the bush who say, is this what we fought for? So understand that in politics, like in business, there is never such a thing as bad press.
He is however shocked by Besigye's decision to refuse representation in the treason trial, whose maximum sentence is death.
I think that when I see Dr. Besigye, the one trial that comes to mind is Mandela's Rivonia trial. Is he trying to recreate Rivonia? I don't know. Were I to be in his shoes, would I decline representation when I'm facing treason? I doubt it. Because treason is one of the most serious charges anyone can face.
We also talked to city lawyer Elias Lukwago, who is also one of Besigye's legal team. Lukwago says that the move by government to open up different charges is a way of watering down his political struggles.
So all these institutions now, the DPP office, the police, the judiciary, and all these other institutions charged with the dispensation of justice are being used by this regime to persecute Dr. Kizza Besigye. So all you are witnessing right now, to sum it up, it's not prosecution, but persecution.
Lukwago, who also doubles as the Kampala Lord Mayor, also watered down the arguments that Besigye is politically gaining capital from the several court cases.
It's horrendous, it's horrible, it's preposterous. So you can imagine that kind of situation, which is life-threatening. It's a threat to your life. You cannot enjoy it. You cannot, certainly you cannot. So whatever political capital you may imagine being derived out of that kind of horrible treatment is secondary.
I also picked his mind on why Besigye would decline to representation by the lawyers in the treason case.
I mean, considering the experience he has got now, I think at least he can effectively represent himself.
Whether it is a political game taken into the arena of the judiciary, one thing is true, that he who alleges must prove, and it is the burden of proof that the scales of justice will either weigh in Besigye's favor or not. Solomon Serwanja, KTN News, Kampala, Uganda.
Now back home, and over 3,000 participants are expected to grace the 2016 edition of the Standard Chartered Marathon, which will be held on the 30th of October this year. Speaking during the launch of the 14th edition of the marathon, Standard Chartered Bank Chief Executive Officer Lamin Manjang said that this year's event will be bigger and better as they seek to raise funds for the Seeing is Believing initiative. Since its inception in 2003, the program has raised over 150 million shillings, helping over 10,000 children. Nairobi Governor Evans Kidero has called on the corporate world to emulate such initiatives.
So far, we have about 11 million beneficiaries who we have reached through health education alone. And we have carried out over 155,000 cataract operations.
I urge all Kenyans to turn up in large numbers to register for this notable cause that will make a difference in the life of a deserving child.
Right, we take a short break now here on Wicked Express. Don't go too far. When we return, we shall be looking at what are in the papers today, some of the headlines. See you in a bit.
Maybe I'm passing a very subtle message. Oh, that's not subtle.
For staying with us here on Weekend Express. Right now, as promised, we want to take a look at the papers this morning, what you can expect to read on your favorite daily, and of course to help us go through that and put some of these things into perspective. I'm joined by Dismas Mokua. Thank you so much for making time to join us.
My pleasure.
Right, let's get on it and start with the Standard on Saturday. Of course, the biggest story would have to be Brexit. That UK vote shocks the world as Cameron quits. This, of course, comes after that Thursday referendum. And the European Union top leaders divided on the timing to trigger Article 50 and begin final leg of exit. This is a story that is on pages 4 through to 8. Maybe just to pick some of the highlights as has been reported here. It is a story that has been done by Standard's Moses Mishira. And just what this story is trying to do is to put into perspective what Britain's exit from the AU means to Kenya. And that Kenya is to seek new trade agreements to access British market after its colonial master, closest political ally and biggest source market for tourism opted out of the EU. And of course, since the results were announced, there has been a lot of analysis across the media platforms just trying to domesticate the impact of this exit. And of course, saw the Treasury CS yesterday saying that this will not have any immediate effect. So, of course, some of the highlights from this story is that in a democratic exercise that threw the entire world into a spin, Britain voted yesterday to exit the EU, and immediately the results were out. Prime Minister David Cameron announced his resignation. And of course, without getting so much into the story because it's quite in-depth, some of the highlights that have been taken out of this exit was the immediate impact which we saw on the weakening of the sterling pound, and of course then the Kenyan shilling becoming stronger against this, and people are analyzing what does this mean to the export market there for Kenyans who imports from Kenya. What is your take from this?
Well, for me, I think this story, what happened in the UK, we need to look at it from 2 levels. Number one, there is the political side and the economic side. And I think majority of Kenyans would be interested from the political side. And what came out clear is that the majority always has got away. If a nation wants to do anything, you allow the people through a referendum to take a decision.
Right.
And the people in the UK have taken a decision. And since the Prime Minister was very heavy on telling the people not to leave the European Union, he's actually taken responsibility and said, I'm going to resign. And one hopes that Kenyan politicians are following this closely, that at the moment you lose public will, you no longer have the goodwill, then you resign. And one would imagine that maybe the IBC was following this closely. Because for Cameron, He did not have to wait for people to go to the streets and do a demonstration. He decided to pack up and leave. And everybody is very happy. Everybody is giving him, a pat on the back by saying, I campaigned, I spent all my resources, all my political capital. The people have said no, and then I'm going back home now. Probably is going into retirement. And then the second thing now from an economics perspective, I think Kenya, we need to have a very strong and robust economic policy. Because a number of the benefits Kenya has been enjoying have been through the European Union and Kenya. All those are multilateral signed. And one hopes that our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and especially the British, or rather our High Commissioner in the UK, is actually studying this thing and studying all the bilaterals and multilateral signed so that Kenya can quickly take advantage of the situation and now sign trade agreements directly between London and Nairobi. So because
this is going to be, you can expect that this will be a lengthy kind of renegotiation of some of these deals that, because they had with Britain as part of EU, now it has to be as Britain,
as Britain and Kenya. But you see, our Ministry of Foreign Affairs gets a huge budget, and we are made to understand that they've got some of the top brains working for foreign affairs. So this is supposed to be their core responsibility, to quickly negotiate this. And then when you look at the headline in the newspapers today, there's an erroneous claim that Kenya is actually going to suffer from this. And that's not entirely accurate, because we import a lot of stuff from the UK, and it's going to be cheaper. Like, for instance, somebody wanted to buy anything from the UK, now it's 10% cheaper. That's probably the time to do it. However, again, we'll suffer especially from the tourist arrivals, because now it's going to become relatively expensive to come to Kenya. But again, because as a nation, we need to really look at our national priorities, because relying on people from the West to come as part of our tourism is not going to make sense. Instead, what we should do is encourage local tourism and regional tourism, so that we get many people coming to Kenya who come from our region.
But just how much revenue, if you do a comparison, does domestic tourism inject as compared to international tourism?
But if you look at the example of South Africa during the apartheid system, they were able to tailor their products for the local markets. The reason why Kenya is very happy to get international tourists is because on average, the people in the hospitality sector in Kenya, their pricing is just obscene. A normal Kenyan would actually not even afford a cup of tea in a 5-star hotel. On average in Kenya right now, if you go to a 5-star hotel and you want to have just a cup of tea, on average is a 500 bob. How many Kenyans would afford a cup of tea, say, at the Hilton this morning? It's because the hospitality players, I think they're a bit greedy.
It's not
and they're lazy.
for our...
If you had a very solid packages for the local Kenyan, then we wouldn't be complaining about the tourist arrivals from the UK. And there's no way an economy would grow if you do not encourage the locals to visit your own facilities.
And I guess another way to see how that would benefit from the domestic kind of consumption is economies of scale also. Because then if it's affordable and packaged for the for the locals, then more and more of us then would be I'm just thinking would be able to access this kind of things, domestic tourism, domestic products, and then eventually we benefit from economies of scale maybe.
And I think as a nation, really, Kenya, we are lazy from two perspectives. You'd rather have 100 Kenyans going to the, say, Mara Serena on a monthly basis than just having one white man coming on a monthly basis. But for some reason, Africans, we do not respect ourselves. And even if you go to the local tourism facilities in Kenya, if you're a native, your fellow natives don't treat you with any level of respect. They'll not see you. But at the moment they see a white man coming, they scamper. It's as if there's a stampede. And so we need to develop those solid products here for our own benefits. And there's nobody who's going to come from Europe to come and assist us. And in any event, when these budget tourists are coming from, say, Europe, because majority of them who come to Kenya are really budget tourists, because as we stand today, Kenya doesn't have anything unique that you would say, wow, there's something unique in Kenya. Whatever you want to get in Kenya, you're going to get it in Botswana.
What do you mean? We have
unique things. I mean, apart from having the national park in the middle of the city.
Come on, this.
No. Apart from the national park in the city, if you want to see a lion, you will see a lion even in a zoo in the US.
I mean, there's the great migration of the wildebeest. You can only see that in Kenya, and
which is once a year. And at that stage, the prices are
Diani
so
Beach, which is what are the best? Was it the best in Africa last year? We have quite some stuff.
Now, the reason why people come to the Diani Beach you're talking about is because Somali is relatively unsafe. Because the one for Somali is got white sand and very clean. compared to the one we have in Mombasa. But in any event, if you're coming to Mombasa, how much would you really afford if you're a normal Kenyan going? And the point I wanted to bring out is for this budget tourist, all the companies are incorporated in the UK. So even when they're paying any amount of money, the money doesn't still get to Kenya. The money is paid to those firms in the UK. So these guys, on average, when they come to Kenya, they don't even have a wallet. They don't have anything. They come because everything has been sorted out. And maybe as a nation, we need to sort out.
So it means we shouldn't panic over that tourism aspect of it and just re-strategize.
Yeah, all we need to do is, I hope that the CS Amina Mohamed is really having a good conversation with the top officials at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, just to look at all the negotiations.
I think they said that in the statement yesterday with Treasury CS, that both the Foreign Ministry and the Treasury are monitoring the situation, and just to avoid, shocks that may come out of this, and for interventions. Well, whenever they're necessary.
If you believe what they said, then the sun sets in the north, because these guys really, they just issue statements, and you would even tell
from... Because we need to calm the storm.
Yeah, but when you look at the statement issued by Carney, the Bank of England governor, he was very solid on his interventions. He went ahead to say that we have set aside 250 billion sterling pounds for anybody that who may need this kind of help. But from Kenya, we are studying the situation, and so you even wonder, what situation are you studying? Because the guys who may be affected are guys in horticulture, the one who sell a lot of flowers. But
because they had that was it, the economic partnership agreement that now has to be reviewed, I guess.
Yeah. So the Minister for Agriculture is missing in action, and the Minister for Foreign Affairs is missing in action. And these are the people who are supposed to tell our farmers that don't be worried about this, we are going to sort out the situation. But you see, they are missing in action. And then one wonders why they're paid a fortune to be in office. Because what you're supposed to do as a nation, and when you talk about foreign affairs, is to proactively guard Kenya's selfish interest. But they're not doing that. And it's not only, relevant in the UK.
But how proactive can you be in this kind of situation?
Well, when the moment you have a diplomat stationed in the UK, whatever is happening in the UK on a daily basis, you would expect him to be doing some sensitivity analysis to find out how does it affect my country at home. Because, he's not been sent to London to go and enjoy single malt whiskey the entire day. No, he's supposed to secure a selfish interest. So one would expect you to be observing the situation, and one expects that he had prepared 2 papers for President Kenyatta. That if they vote out, these are the likely implications, and this is how we manage the situation.
And imagine that kind of a thing happened.
Well, the statement issued from State House yesterday by Manoa Isipisu, where he said that the president was not keen to comment on this matter, it really tells you that nobody has done any research. And if you look at other economies, like, say, Russia, the Russian president was very happy. He said, I'm very happy, I'm going to have a good night's sleep, because he doesn't want a very strong European Union. He wants those people to negotiate directly with him. The French president is very nervous, because he knows now next, the people in his country are going to say, let's do a referendum. And all of them had prepared policy positions. Even President Obama did a quick U-turn, because he had even gone to the UK to tell them that if you get out of the European Union, you'll be at the back of the queue when we are cutting deals with you. But yesterday he indicated that these are global dynamics and we must learn and live with them. So he was actually prepared. He had 2 statements. But again, maybe expecting that our State House and other functionaries were prepared for this, maybe it's a tall order. For us, we operate, like robots. We just wait for the sun to rise and set.
And we react to things as they come. And of course, another kind of effect, first, as you say, a story I saw on The Nation, that there is an economic analyst saying that it would be unwise to imagine that the immediate weakening of the sterling pound should send us all into a panic, that we can't expect this to be a continuing thing, that we expect the pound to continue to weaken. So it's something that should be under observation. But also that Britain is the 4th biggest contributor to the EU. And of course, we have so many EU-funded projects in Kenya. So of course, in that way, we're also going to, be affected.
But normally when those projects are funded, in as much as it comes under the umbrella of the EU, it goes to a specific country. But even if it was going to be affected, then that's why you need our diplomats to be proactive and find out who are the signatories to those contracts, and then start renegotiating deals quickly, so that they serve Kenya's selfish interest. But I think long term, again, as a nation, we must accept and be ready for this kind of
that's
situations.
The thing, right?
Yeah, because every nation is aggressively pursuing selfish interests.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So and it's for the rest of the nations to just realign their interests with the new positions of the states, right?
Yeah, but what was interesting with that vote, according to the demographics done, the majority of the guys who voted are actually pensioners, very old guys who have taken decisions for their youth.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, on average.
And an interesting thing I saw this month actually was an article by the Washington Post showing that some of the Google searches yesterday are actually shocking because the Brits were Googling about what is the EU, what is Brexit, what does this mean? Like getting to know this after you've voted out, and it's really unfortunate actually. So in that sense, not so many of them.
Yeah, and I think a lesson for Kenya is that when you're supposed to participate in elections, you should actually go and participate in the election and cast your ballot, not informed by your tribal thinking. Because when you analyze the stories from the UK, everybody was voting based on policy or the understanding of policy. And they were saying that maybe a guy who is a 70-year-old said that let's leave the European Union. He probably has another 10 years, and then he's going to meet his maker. And then a guy who's 20 years old has another 50 years now to live with a decision made by a pensioner. So I think in Kenya, it's also incumbent on us that when you're going for the election, we ensure that the Kenyan youth actually wakes up early in the morning to go and cast their ballots.
That they know this actually is up to them to make a decision for their future they want to see.
Then an interesting thing is there's the inherent assumption that actually you know what you're voting for. As you've indicated, majority of them voted. Others, it was just for fun. They did not understand why they were voting. And when they start understanding and appreciating the implication of their vote, then they begin to understand, wow, did this actually happen?
Yeah.
They had no idea why they were voting.
It's going to be too
and the same happens
late.
in Kenya, because we are told that you vote 6 piece. So if the president is Jubilee all the way to the MCA, you're just looking for the box and ticking. You don't know the implication. I think there's a very good story that we need to learn.
So some lessons to draw from that also.
Yeah, and a story related to IBC, that it took this country called UK 4 hours to start posting the results. And it was about 34 million people who voted. But while in Kenya, you have less than 10 million people voting, and it takes 4 days to get the results. Again, one hopes, probably, if they have a budget, that either Carson and company would have maybe gone to London to see how these results have been done, that within 4 hours, the results are out. And David Cameron has not gone to the Supreme Court to lodge an appeal and say, no, wait a minute, this election was flawed. So many things that Kenya can learn from
so
the
many
UK.
things to learn, and maybe things we don't not already know. Yes, it's just the will to change things. So right, that was the biggest story on the Standard on Saturday.
There's another interesting story about President Obama and President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Oh, that phone call.
On a phone call, yeah.
Where did I see that story?
Yeah, it's the page 1 in the Standard.
Page 2 on the Standard, actually.
Now, the interesting story is that in the US, wherever the president makes any call to any leader in the world, a few hours later, they notify the nation. They say, President Obama has made a call. And this was the nature of the call, the content of the call. Because understanding the US, people have to know what the president is saying and what he does. Actually, wherever there's an official meeting of more than 3 people, it has to be made public. So that, because Obama is working for the interest of the US. And one expects that after this conversation, President Uhuru is also going to be very open. When he calls Museveni Kagame, we need to know that on a Friday at 10 o'clock, President Kenyatta had a conversation with President Museveni, and there was a quarrel about the railway line or SGR. It's important for that kind of transparency as a best practice.
We need to know everything, not on a need-to-know basis.
No, not on a need-to-know basis, because it's assumed that President Uhuru Kenyatta is our employee.
Right.
So when you've got somebody back in the village taking care of your cows, he needs to give you a report on a daily basis. How they were grazing the cows, how much milk was collected on a particular day. So even we need to know, the president needs to keep us posted when he has all these conversations. Of course, informed by security interest.
Right.
If he's discussing security issues, we don't need to know. But a bit of transparency with them.
And also, so just to get into the content of that call, actually, that the two leaders on the 4th paragraph, that the two leaders discuss the challenges Kenya faces in hosting hundreds of thousands of refugees for more than 2 decades and the need for strong international support. The President Kenyatta reiterated that Kenya will continue to respect the dignity and safety of refugees. So basically talking about the refugee situation in Kenya.
You know, there's Kenya is a signatory to many international conventions which say that for a refugee, you cannot force him to go back home unless he's a threat to your national security or public order. And clearly,
which they say that they are a threat to national security.
But have you seen anybody ever taking a refugee to court because they're a threat to national security or public order? You know, like for instance, Kaiseri has kept on saying that a number of terrorists in Kenya actually come from these camps. If they've got that information, how come they've not arrested 20 and you know, they're serving time in Kamisia? That has not happened. And you know, these refugees do not come to Kenya because, you know, they're coming like a tourist. They come to the refugee camp. They find the life is so exciting. They say, let's stay. Life in the refugee camps is horrible. And there's not a decent human being who would like to stay in a refugee camp. So they're here because the conditions back at home are unacceptable. And one hopes that as we do this repatriation, nobody should be forced to go back home.
I guess the challenge has been from the argument is that the processing of, the coming in of the refugees and all that, that it creates that opportunity for, these terrorists to come through that registration of refugees. But of course, one can also argue that you can have a foolproof system to actually verify and, just keep tabs on these people who are coming into the country. So.
You know, Sharon, you've got the UNHCR, which is supposed to take care of the issues of the refugees, and then you've got our own security system. So when you get a refugee from a camp with a Kenyan ID and a Kenyan passport, and they don't speak Swahili, but you know, for all intents and purposes, they're Kenyans, you cannot start blaming the other refugees. You blame our own system, the Department of Immigration and our security agencies. Because they're the ones who issue the passports, they're the ones who give them the IDs, they're the ones who let them in. So it would be important for us to treat refugees with a lot of care. But in any event, I saw the PS Kibisho indicating that we need about, as a nation, 20 billion for this exercise, and we only have 1 billion. So still we are going to rely on the international community.
But we saw also Ban Ki-moon just backing that decision and saying he's going to spearhead the campaign to get more funds. So
so we need that 19 billion. But really, they must be treated in a manner that reflects their dignity, so that we do not contravene any international protocols. And in any event, if you want not to respect the international protocols, there's a very high chance that we are not going to get that 19 billion from the international community, because it's the same guys who are going to give us that resource.
Right.
Then there's also an interesting story still on page 3. The president having appointed a few new faces to be in charge of strategic
it is one that has caused a lot of, backlash from many people, saying the age-old story of recycling, the old leaders. Where is the place for youthful leaders? Everyone is asking.
Well, you know, there were a few young guys who were appointed, the new chairman of the youth fund, Mr. Ronald Osumba, and a couple of guys. But you see, when traditionally these positions, especially in the parastatals, have been used to grow political capital. So all these guys who've been appointed by President Kenyatta, it's not that they're the best tools in the shade, but they've been appointed because of the need to secure their political interest.
We're getting into that electioneering period.
But again, you know, interesting enough, majority of these guys who've been appointed, like especially on that page 3, apart from retired General Karangi, all of them are politicians and they'll be seeking for elective positions. So one wonders whether they'll actually be able to dedicate their time and do their level best. These kind of assignments are supposed to be given to younger people in their 40s and early 50s, who would like to demonstrate to the world that they're actually very sharp and they can deliver on something. Majority of these guys who are appointed, they'll only be going to their offices to collect per diems and maybe get a government vehicle. Outside that, they'll be back in their constituencies doing campaigns, which is really bad, seeing that there's a lot of talent among the Kenyan youth.
This happens every other time, especially the years before elections. Is it that the public is not angry enough? Why is this cycle not getting broken? That we know exactly why this is happening, but that it continues to happen?
You know, Kenya, largely, we suffer from lack of inclusivity and sycophancy. So there's a 50% of the Kenyan nation which believes that President Kenyatta did something very good. Everybody's happy, everybody's supposed to clap for him. And another 50% which thinks that it's a bad idea. Now, the people believe that the president did the right thing will never ever criticize the president, even if he does the wrong thing. They'll never find fault in what he's done. They'll never take up the opportunity to have a conversation with him, and this will continue. So I guess we need to reconcile ourselves to the fact that parastatal jobs, especially the chairmanship, are going to be for people who will be giving the president political capital.
So another story that could interest us on the Standard is on page 9, on that Jubilee merger, efforts that Ruto saying that one party will ensure a win. Of course, we are waiting. They said they're on the final, leg of launching this new party. The Deputy President, William Ruto, has said that formation of JAP would bring to an end the ruling coalition as it was formed in 2013, that the inauguration of JAP, which is in the home stretch, was meant to ensure President Uhuru Kenyatta's win next year's polls and form a united government under one party.
Well, that's interesting, because when you look at our political parties in Kenya, they're not anchored on any philosophy or any ideology. Like, for instance, when you go to the US, when you talk about the Democrats, they say our society can exist, but we need a bit of regulation, while the Conservatives say we need minimal government in our lives. But in Kenya, our political parties are anchored on our personalities. So a few days ago, when they were saying that
merely vehicles to
special purpose vehicles, because when you look at their manifestos of all these political parties, I suspect that the first ever manifesto was done by Professor Anyang' Nyong'o. So whenever you are getting a new political party coming on board, all you need to do is to go cut and paste and replace the title of the political party, and you'll have something coming up. So this Jubilee is all about the Deputy President Ruto and his boss, President Kenyatta. In the absence of those two people, you have nothing called Jubilee. And the same happens with CORD. In the absence of Raila, Kalonzo, and Wetangula, you don't have an organization called CORD.
But what they have continued to say is that what this will do is unite the nation, rather than having, these parties that are affiliated with regional kind of political affairs, that you have one thing, a party that draws membership from across the region, that then it would be part of that journey to dissolve thinking regionally, tribalism. Surely that holds some water.
No. That's very, very good propaganda. Chinua Achebe in Nigeria says, when you're telling the people to be united, are you suggesting that in the first instance they're never united? Because Kenyans are generally united. It's only our political leaders who are not united. A few days ago, there was a bit of tension between several communities in Kenya. But when our leaders treated us to some sort of drama, having fish together, the political tension goes down. And our tragedy in Kenya is politicians.
We're dancing to this.
Yeah, it's politicians who create problems in Kenya. And they create a lot of tension. When you talk about the Pangani 6, for a couple of days, they created so much tension in Kenya. And then when they decided to sort out the problem, again, we are giving them a clap on the back and we are breaking into a dance and song, which is unacceptable. When the Deputy President says that this party is going to unite Kenya, what he really means is that it's going to unite two communities and secure for him a win for 2022. Because the Deputy President is not looking is not looking at the next election. Because in any event, as a separate political items, that's a URP and a TNA, President Kenyatta still won. The Deputy President is looking at a special purpose vehicle for 2022. And when they say that they want to unite Kenya, I think that's a fallacy. One of these fine days, somebody needs to ask him that question: whom are you uniting and in whose interest? Because he's uniting the
whole country, maybe?
If you wanted to unite the whole country, then we would see a lot more inclusivity. You recall what Chapter 10 of the Kenyan Constitution says, that when you're putting together your government or your cabinet and the senior appointments, they must reflect the face of Kenya. When you look at the current administration, especially the cabinet, I don't know whether you see the face of Kenya. When you look at the positions of the parastatals, majority of the public appointments, you don't get to see the face of Kenya. So how can you unite the nation if you don't see the face of Kenya? And the same would happen if Mr. Raila Odinga was in office. You're not going to see the face of Kenya. What they do is they tend to reward their sycophants. But one hopes that as we proceed to the next election, actually the Kenyan youth will be able to vote for leadership, not because you come from the same region, not because you come from the same village, but because you identify with their aspirations. Because, for instance, Sharon, we are told that Singapore and South Korea are our age mates. At 1963, we had the same performance indicators. But now South Korea gives foreign aid to the US. When President Obama wants to cut a trade deal, he has to go to South Korea and plead with the South Korean president. So why did we get it wrong? If we had a very good leadership in Kenya that is all-inclusive, then we wouldn't be comparing ourselves with Burundi. We would be comparing ourselves with Singapore. But as it is, as a nation, we probably don't know what's good for us.
Hopefully we shall soon.
You know, hope is not a good strategy.
I know. So another, maybe some of the last stories from the Standard. On page 10, the IBC standoff, of course. And we saw just the other day that 4 of the commissioners chose to go home. And CORD leaders now saying that pay IBC chiefs willing to go home. They're urging the government to do that. That CORD leader Raila Odinga and Senators Johnson Muthama and James Orengo yesterday piled pressure on commissioners of the Electoral Commission to resign as they embarked on a 2-day tour of the coast. And Raila called for electoral reforms to create a level playground before next year's elections, saying that Jubilee should negotiate with CORD in good faith because electoral reform is not something that should be taken lightly.
Yeah, actually one hopes that when the IBC team gets together, they'll prepare a very good exit strategy for these commissioners. Because a number of them are afraid that as soon as they leave office, they're going to be prosecuted.
Right.
And a number of them, I think they took mortgages and a lot of loans anchored on their salaries. So that one needs to be sorted out.
So it's still a grey area on what it means when they leave.
Yeah, so they need to be given some level of comfort. But I think the resignation is long overdue. And, you know, we said that in Kenya, unfortunately, you don't resign. It's as if when you're appointed to a public position, you've been given a title deed and this becomes your piece of land. I'm not moving out of this. They should borrow a leaf from David Cameron and take a walk home, come up with a nice, you know, soft landing pad. They're given the exit incomes. They go home and celebrate a new living. Now, there's some interesting story. I know you've got a lot of interest on Babu Namwamba. And you know, he was appointed as, or rather, actually appointed as the Secretary General of ODM. Because you can't say that there was an election to give him that position. But when you get this serious position as the Secretary General, and you're the engine of a political party, and then you're missing in action, then you start blaming your party leader for not giving you support. I think it's been a letdown to the Kenyan youth. And if you want to resign, just resign. Stop kicking a fuss all over. And, you know, there are many people who accuse him of letting down the Kenyan youth. He was given an opportunity to serve in the biggest political party in Kenya, but he did not take advantage of it. And all he did was to show us something about his family and kids. So one wonders, in the unlikely event that he becomes a president and his wife is going to labor, would he say we are not going to have an inauguration because I'm going to a labor ward?
Right, so I don't know if you have any other story of interest. Otherwise, we can move quickly to the Saturday Nation just to take a look at some of the highlights there. Of course, the biggest story, of course, is also about the Brexit and how Britain's EU vote affects Kenya. And then, of course, we've talked in depth about that. That at stake is immigration, export, tourism, and imports. There's a story that they have on pages 4, 5, and 38 of the Saturday Nation.
But what was interesting about David Cameron when he made the announcement that he was going to resign, he was flanked by his wife, something which rarely happens in Kenya. When our top ministers or public officials are in trouble, you never get to see their spouses. I don't know whether they fear their spouses seeing them, that they may shed some tears and their spouses will be around to watch that happen. Or maybe they've got so many that spoiled for choice, they don't know.
Perhaps what event comes to mind that
No, there's so many resignations I've seen happening. People saying that I'm not going to resign, but eventually when they resign, they send out a media statement. You never see their see their spouses. And I think this is a very good indication of promoting family values. That your spouse, whether it's a man or a woman, is standing next to you, telling you that I know you're in trouble. You're paining, but I'm on your side. I don't know whether that will happen in Kenya.
At least we're seeing some of that face, be it not in bad situations. I mean, we're seeing a Babu standing with his family. We're seeing happy family pictures. So at least we know that they have some happy families in there.
you know those photos, what they actually tell you, it's more about socialites than serious family settings.
All right. There's that story there that the readers can grab a copy and read about the Jubilee struggles to unite in Kajiado as incumbent offers CORD a head start. And we just saw that Ole Lenku is also eyeing that seat in Kajiado.
And he just got appointed. So
Yeah.
I wonder how he's going to spend that time. But again, you see, this one is in contravention of chapter 6 on integrity, that if you're a public servant, you're not supposed to be engaging in politics. Majority of the guys who are appointed by the president to these positions are actually public servants, and they'll be running for political seats. So you actually wonder whether people say that we've got the best progressive constitution in the world, but we actually wonder whether or not we're able to respect the constitution. And it's supposed to be the responsibility
it's one thing
of
having
IBC.
the document.
Yeah, we just have a document that is not adding value to Kenyans.
Right, I think that's about it. That's about it for the papers this morning.
Well, there's an interesting story again about, that's on page 8, that the governor has appointed a new mouthpiece. The Nation is very interesting that appoints a new mouthpiece, Noela Msundi, hoping that they will be able to get to know what happens at the county government of Nairobi.
A new director of communications that Ms. Noela Musundi takes over from Mr. Walter Mongare with the details of what led to the latter's suspension remaining scanty.
What is interesting about her appointment is that people are already saying that it's not based on merit, given the fact that she's related to Eugene Wamalwa. So again, in Kenya, if you are not known to the political class and you're hoping to get a state appointment, forget it.
But I could ask for, as we commonly say, a person. Why is it important for Nairobians to know that we have a new communications person? All we need to know is what is happening, what is affecting us.
No, you know, the governor said that he's done a lot of stuff that we do not know.
Or because it was not communicated.
Yeah, so he claims that he's been winking at a girl in the dark, so nobody gets to know about it. So we hope that she'll actually tell us what has been happening. But again, you raise a very fundamental issue. There are issues of development, especially for Nairobi. Like, for instance, right now...
And some of these things you'll just,
you just feel them. Like, for instance, if it starts drizzling... Yeah, when it starts drizzling right now, there's going to be a traffic jam. There's going to be a flood everywhere. So even if you don't have a very solid communication strategy, but people will actually be able to see that from the time Governor Kidero took over, if it rains, there's no traffic. In the morning, there's no congestion. In as much as a lot of traffic in Nairobi comes from Kajiado or Machakos, but don't you think it's actually unacceptable that on somebody who stays in, say, Ongacharongai, has to spend 2 hours in the morning in traffic and 2 hours in the evening in traffic? Yet you have a governor whose core responsibility is to address issues of traffic. So that's when you don't even need a communication strategy. You just need to see traffic flowing and you'll be a happy man.
True. I think let's wind it up there, Dismas.
Yeah, there's a story done by on page 13, briefly, on Ezekiel Mutua. He says that people have gotten it wrong on what he's been saying, but I think he's preparing for a political seat because his statements are very interesting.
He's been ruffling so many
that he wants people to get licenses for weddings and stuff like that. It's as if we're in the Middle East here, we need a moral police. And he's the Inspector General of Kenya's moral police.
Right, it is on that note. So those are some of the stories that you can expect to get in your dailies today. Thank you so much, Dismas, for joining us for that segment. And right now we want to take a short break, and when we return, we shall have some of the national youth leaders joining us on set. We have Bob Njagi, who is the Deputy Director of Elections in ODM. We have Gideon Keter, who is the President of the National Youth Congress in URP. And we have Ben Ogutu, who is also a National Coordinator of the National Youth Senate, will be joining us to discuss many matters, including the recent appointments in the National Youth Council. Don't go too far.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Thank you for inviting me here. Yeah.
Yes. Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Yes. My name is Bob Njagi. Can you hear me? Testing. Yes.
Oh, we are not contented. Elections are to be held. Yeah. Kidogo.
Okay. Sawa sawa mheshimiwa. Na chochoa Sabiru.
Regazetted a few appointment. I mean, there should be elections by youth representatives from all of. There was no election. Yeah.
Tunajua tunapendana lakini kwa age go towards the age and then Gideon a bit to the center.
Seats. Are you going to be comfortable?
Well, welcome back and thank you for staying with us. As promised, right now we are joined by some of the national youth leaders here on set to discuss some pertinent issues regarding the youth, including the recent appointments to the National Youth Council. And I will introduce them to my immediate left. We have Ben Ogutu, who is the National Coordinator of the National Youth Senate. Thank you for making time to join us. We have Gideon Keter, who is the President of the URP, National Youth Congress. Yes. Thank you for joining us. We have Bob Njagi, who is the Deputy Director of ODM, Elections in ODM. Thank you, gentlemen, for making time to join us. And I'll start with you, Ben, because I know we had the appointments recently to the National Youth Council. First of all, not so many people are aware about what this National Youth Council, like we know it exists, but not so many people know about it. And you petitioned the Cabinet Secretary concerning this appointment. Tell us a bit about your concerns.
First of all, the National Youth Council is a body which came into place through an act of parliament way back in 2009 to champion issues of youth, national youth policy, empowerment of young persons in the country, and many other things affecting young people in the nation. So after the coming into place of the act, elections were held, which brought into office the previous leadership of the National Youth Council. So
this was back in 2012, yeah?
Yeah, the gazettement way back in 2012. So, and the term was to run for a period of 3 years. So now that the term has come into conclusion of the previous office, a new leadership is expected to come in place.
Right.
So our concern is based on the fact that elections were not held to bring into place a new leadership. Yeah.
Is this a concern that you share also, Gideon, that this, the leadership was appointed rather than elected?
Yes, due process was not followed. And what we expected as the sector, within the sector of the youth, is more a better way of handling it, because we need to strengthen that institution. And the only way to strengthen such an institution is
taking them through a process that at the end of the day, it will instill some discipline and some mindset or inbuilt mindset within the Kenyan youth in general, because that is the only body, that is one of the bodies that we look up to as youth, that we need to copy whatever they are doing. If we don't do election there, if we don't do proper way of ensuring we have the right people, even in institutions like universities, primary, secondary, how they will do their own things, they will copy the national politics, of which we need to give the audience, the youth, an alternative to copy a style. Because if you go these days, you go to high schools and you go to universities, they've changed from chairman to president. They followed the new constitution. They followed, even if it is campaigns, they also follow what they see at the national. So we wanted to set a precedent, set a stage for the youth to copy something on how to do some election, on how to do, to arrive at their own leader. Because we only know IEBC and we know only for the political parties. We don't know others.
Right.
Yeah, so we wanted to, what I know about this generation of the youth is what they see
is what they
put into practice.
Right.
So if we had given them an alternative on how they should practice their democratic right and do select their own or elect their own, it could have been a bigger picture. It will be a plus to the youth sector. Women are ahead of us because they know how best to handle their affairs. Youth on our section, I think no one is taking us serious because they take advantage that we are the most disorganized majority. So they tend to organize us in a way we really don't want to.
Right.
So we better highlight these things early so that in future we may not repeat it again.
Right. And you rightly say that maybe youth are not as unified and really understanding their rights and how to participate in governance. Yes. And Bob, as a leader, you know, in one of the biggest parties in the country, what is the place of the youth in governance really? How much involved are they in governance, both in party politics and in such instruments such as the Youth Council? Maybe not so many are even aware of that.
Sheila, first, I must say from our perspective, I wish there was somebody else from my party who was speaking onto these issues, because we have a national youth coordinator by the name Benson Musungu. He's best placed to respond to such matters of youth. As a deputy director of election, my main mandate is with elections and campaigns. That said, as a Kenyan, I have an interest in youth matters. We indeed had a problem when we saw a new leadership being endorsed by the president, because we did not hear of any elections being called for the National Youth Council.
Right.
The youth is the biggest tribe in Kenya, the young people. And I think for a while, this current government has shortchanged the young people of Kenya. It began in 2013 when they promised that they're going to give 6 billion shillings that was meant for the runoff to the young people,
right,
through I think the youth fund. As a matter of fact, what really happened, we had a Ministry of Youth. It was scrapped in the new government of Jubilee, and the youth docket was placed as a department in the Ministry of Sports and Gender. So you can see that in terms of being proactive about youth issues, the Jubilee government has really let down the young people of Kenya. Going forward, in terms of the NYC, it is wrong for the government to pick and appoint young leaders to represent other young people in the country, whereas the law states that this is it should be a competitive process through which they are elected. So I sympathize with the young persons in Kenya because they've been shortchanged to that effect.
Right.
In regards to matters of youth in governance and leadership, our party is the only party in this country that has a vibrant youth wing. In regards to...
I think Gideon is bubbling.
Yes, yes. They don't have any structures for their young people. We have a youth president who is elected through the county delegates, and we have a system all the way to the polling station of young Democrats. So we are encouraging the young people to take part in leadership within the party. Secondly, come the 2017 general elections, we are looking at proposals to support the young candidates who are coming up in various positions of leadership by offering them affirmative action in regards to how they take part in the nominations,
Right.
so that they are not put on the same level with other
Okay, and I want to bring Gideon specifically on this, just to respond to that, the place of leadership and the youth in the current government, because you have stakes in your Jubilee young leader. Do you feel that this government has shortchanged the youth?
From the president's side and as from the Jubilee side, I think we have a listening government. The president and the deputy are the most listening and supportive to the youth, as I can quote him, that there was 6 billion that was set aside for the youth, women, and the categories of people with disability. And that did happen. That's why they launched the Wezo Fund, they launched the Youth Fund and the rest. The only problem we
Funds
had,
that have been marred with a lot of corruption.
Yes, the only problem
also
is the individuals who had been mandated to manage the funds and assist the rest. So that is not the problem of the government. Those are the problems, values Kenyans hold when it comes to ethics of an office.
So that the instruments were in place to you know, to boost the youth in the country.
So that those are the processes we want to see when, for instance, in the case of what he mentioned, that in the previous government there was Ministry of Youth, but came 2013, that ministry was under now the Ministry of Devolution. However, come 2015, around March, when these corruption cases of individuals mismanaging the funds, personally, as a president from one of the youth leaders in Jubilee government, joined together by NGOs and civil societies, I led them to a call for us, a call asking the president, can you create for us a youth ministry in March 2015? Since our government is listening government, come towards the end of 2015, President set aside or set up a youth ministry alongside public service, with the leadership of Cecile Kariuki. That is in itself, I believe, the Jubilee government has a plan, has a wish, and has the love for the youth of this country.
Right.
The only challenge is now the individuals appointed to lead, because some of the Kenyans lack values good values of leadership. Saying that, and also to comment on what he mentioned about that ODM is the only party that has structures and they have a good plan for the youth. I'll differ a little bit, because I believe action speak louder than words.
And I'm just going to take it up from there. Actions speak louder than words, and bring you in, Ben, from the National Youth Senate, because Gideon is telling us about all this love and goodwill that the government has for the youth. And I'm being the devil's advocate here. How much is this love and goodwill actually translated to, you know, benefits to the youth? First, maybe tell us a little bit about the National Youth Senate for the benefit of those who may not understand what it's about.
Okay, the National Youth Senate is a non-governmental youth-led organization. We draw membership from the 47 counties in Kenya. So basically, we came together as young persons and saw the need to really try and engage the young people across the 47 counties further in matters of empowerment, skills development, and creating opportunities for them.
All right.
Sure.
And in doing so, creating opportunities, are you working with who are your partners? Government, NGOs, or how is
Yeah,
your
we
operation?
seek partnerships from like-minded organizations, our county governments, because like I've said, we are spread across the country in the 47 counties. So we try and seek ways in which we can work together with other stakeholders in the youth industry.
All right. And at the moment, just because you engage with the youth across the country, what are some of the concerns or opportunities that the youth, you'd say, are feeling as being the largest population in the country at the moment?
Okay, our concern, the main concern, there is a challenge still, much as these opportunities, like Gideon has pointed out, the 30% procurement opportunities for the youth.
Right.
These are opportunities which are there, but in the real sense, we still believe that the young persons in the country are not feeling them. And you will find that like the
Why
case...
is that? Why are they not feeling that?
I mean, the structures that are in place are still not really reaching out to impact the lives of young persons in the country.
Right.
Like you pointed out previously, there has been corruption in the leadership, which is unfortunate that there are still some young persons who are in these bodies, but because of corruption and other challenges in terms of structures, the young persons have not been fully able to get their fair share.
All right.
Yeah.
And just speaking about opportunities and all that, the biggest that has come, to public is the appointments just hours ago, to these parastatals, and there has been a lot of backlash. People saying that, we're only having the old people recycled. Is it because of the electioneering period? And what's your take on that? Again, I'm being the devil's advocate here.
Yes, I looked at the appointments only even this morning. Out of the 32 positions that were shared out, I think none has gone to the young people. I'm seeing the likes of Kajembe, from Mombasa, who got appointments. These are people, again, who are in the political circles. So to me, I think, again, this is just another strategy to position leaders ahead of the 2017 elections. But again, it's also shooting themselves in the foot. I can see on issues of inclusivity, we have one community that has been given about 20% of the seats coming from one region. Whereas you have regions like Eastern in Meru, and there's nobody who's been appointed. Yet these are the people who say that the traditional vote, what do you call it, the tyranny of numbers, but they lack any appointment coming from that region. Sheila, this is something that is not acceptable. We had, in our referendum for Core Kenya, one of the issues that we raised was inclusivity in government appointments, whereby our recommendation was that at least 10%, not more than 10% of any jobs go to one community. So that if you have 30 positions, not more than 10% of those positions going to one community, so that we can have a more inclusive government for all people. There is nobody from Turkana in that list. Aren't they Kenyans? Aren't they well educated? And they capable of holding positions, public positions? So Jubilee cannot run away with this. I condemn it personally, and I think it was not a well thought out
Then again,
list.
it's 34, positions, I believe, and there are
32.
32.
Yes.
So then again, one can argue that you cannot possibly have all.
You cannot have all tribes, but you can go by regions. Are you understanding? Like we have the coast region. The coast region has a number of tribes within the coast. You have the Mijikenda. You can pick 3 people from coast region, 3 people from western region, 3 people from Nyanza, 3 people from central, 3 people from Rift Valley. You see, so you can balance out the whole country to feel that there is a face of the country in the appointments.
Right.
Yes.
Gideon, is this a concern that you share? Because this has been...
Since I understand a little bit of what is happening, what I can remind the viewers and my friend is, appointments are made in phases. So maybe this phase, you only saw these faces, but in the other phases, you will also see other people from other tribes coming in. It's only that this phase, you only saw that. But I believe even in appointment, you will see there is a clear line that all are included. It may not be.
That's incorrect.
It may not be that everyone has been included, but there is a sign that all have been included. For instance,
you're not seeing this sign, Bob.
No, I don't think we're in the same country. I don't think we're reading from the same page, because
let me differ a little bit. Let me differ a little bit, Bob. You find I've interacted with these people who want this appointment, but they say, I will not take my CV to the president. That is not our government. That is not our coalition. So how will we help you if you don't even
saying that they do not want this appointment
because
they are not aligning themselves.
And they fear if the president appoints them, they will say, they will appear in the opposition. They've been absolved.
Is this
that is
a
the whole
reasoning
picture.
that you are...
That is the whole picture. They don't want to be appointed because they know if they are appointed by the Jubilee government,
but I think you have to
late.
be given that option of
They believe it is a bribe.
appointment
Now,
first before you say,
yes.
I don't want to be appointed.
I think I need to correct my brother somehow.
That is why in ODM...
Excuse me, could I respond to you?
That's why in ODM you find them attacking Ababu Namwamba just because he didn't appear in demonstration. That is as a sign that if you appear, and they always blackmail him that he wants to come to Jubilee, of which we welcome everyone anyway, but you see that blackmailing. If you happen to be appointed on the side of Jubilee, wanasema umenunuliwa. So they better stay in the dark.
So you think that...
it's not a problem of Jubilee.
First and foremost, I wish my brother can first clarify. When he said they, does it mean a community? Or does it mean Bob Njagi and others? Or does it mean the party?
Affiliation of the opposition.
Because I believe we have members of all communities probably within Jubilee, unless it is only two communities, so they can only pick from their side, those who supported them. But we have people in Nyanza, we have people in Rift Valley who support Jubilee. Why can't they be appointed? Why do we stick to 20% of the guys appointed coming from central Kenya? Is that the Kenya we want?
No.
No.
Right, and Ben, as you deal with the youth across the counties, is this a sense you feel that some of the regions, some of the youth are feeling marginalized in some of these activities and not feeling included?
Okay, for me, my first concern is the way the people are appointed in comparison, the young persons in this appointment, because out of the appointments, the youngest person, who is only one, I think, in the entire group, is 33. Yeah, but we find that much as the debate on the regions aside, there is a trend which is emerging, which is unfortunate, like retired politicians, retired civil servants, again and again. Then on the issue of regional balance, I believe it should not just only be felt, but we should see it in actualization. Like we know that out of the 47 regions, at least maybe it will be more prudent to let us see it, that there are young persons, much as we don't just advocate for young persons to be there, but inclusivity.
But actually seeing it. And Gideon, as you know, as the young leaders now and perhaps the future leaders, and what has been agreed, and I think the kind of conversation we are having as the youth is one that we have leadership that is based on policy, based on principle, rather than party stuff, you know, party affiliations, and just sticking to that party no matter what, you know, their grounds are. And if we cannot agree what we are seeing barely there, that there's a regional issue, there's a, you know, inclusivity issue, is that not an issue, Gideon?
It's not an issue from my view, and because I can give you a perfect example. When it rains in this country, when heaven releases rain in this country, it doesn't rain all parts of the country at the same time. That today it rained Kenya. It will not rain in Coast, it will rain everywhere. It will rain in the Eastern, it will rain in Rift Valley, it will not rain in Central. So it is an understanding, it's an art in leadership also to express the same. When there is blessings, appointment from the government, it might not touch all parts of the country at the same time, because maybe the slots are available. But that's why I said there are phases of appointments. And if you look at...
there is a systematic
how does he explain 20%?
Yes,
how do you explain
raining on a particular region continually?
And that is why
how would you explain that rain? Is there a storm
statistically,
in Kenya?
Is there a cloud that is permanent?
That has not moved to other regions?
No, statistically, if you look at the appointments, 50% of all tribes are always included. As much as you want to say there is one region which is represented, always there are some other sub-tribes which are also represented. This is a concern also from our side, because at times we go out and ask for CVs, but these people don't come, or they don't qualify. So will we substitute quality?
So you ask for
quantity?
CVs for
this
from
position,
across the region, and
for
then
this position. Even personally, I will normally ask youth, bring your CVs, then I will take it to the president or the relevant body that is considering for appointment, and then they do the vetting. look at those people, the few who have been given that chance, and then maybe they are suffering from integrity issues. If they don't show up, what will the president do? See, we work with what who
Gentlemen,
are willing.
at this point, I want to bring, recently the NCIC, the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, gave statistics indicating that Kenya at this time is experiencing the worst division to ever be witnessed a year before elections. And the cohesion index now in 2016 is at 40% compared to 56% in 2012, a year before the 2013 election. So we are more divided now. What would you say are some of the drivers of this division, and that should we need to worry about this, Ben?
I believe that the first element is the heated political temperatures that the country is currently witnessing. But at the same time, the NCIC as the body which is charged with the responsibility of promoting cohesion in the country, I believe they have still not reached fully the potential that they have to help ease the tension that is there. Because what we are seeing currently, like over the past week, the clashes on the Nandi-Kisumu border, I mean, they came into place after this thing had happened. So we are seeing a trend whereby the NCIC just wait until stuff explodes, then they go there to try and check. So we first of all need to ease. I know we are a very political nation, but I mean the temperatures.
Politics of divisiveness.
Politics of divisiveness.
And Bob, what is really the role? Because as Ben says, politically, it's like the political tones are always the biggest drivers of these lines of division. What is the role of political parties really, and the responsibility to ensure that as a nation we're not divided?
Sharon, first I might say that NCIC, by doing an index and getting 40%, is an approval rating on themselves. It means that they are underperforming as an institution. Because if that index was at 70%, then you can say that the Kaparo-led commission is actually working hard to bring cohesion or to foster cohesion amongst Kenyans. But what we are saying...
Kindly allow me to ask you to hold that thought.
Yes.
I'm told that we have Dennis Itumbi on the line who wants to comment on the issue of appointments. Dennis, good morning. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Sharon.
Right.
Now, I'm getting in because of some of the issues I've had on that screen.
Right.
First of all, yesterday, if we're talking about yesterday's appointment, we had 31 appointments yesterday. In those 31 appointments, they were well representative. It is not true that there was no one who was, there was an absence of anyone from any region.
Right.
For instance, we had an appointment to insurance tribunal, and in the insurance tribunal we had Ms. Charity Selina Kisoto. We had Lapset Corridor Development Authority, a board member, that was Mr. Ali Didab Kula,
right,
from Turkana.
Right.
We had Ms. Alice May Kirenge, also on the Lapset Corridor from Lamu.
Right.
We had Lucy Yinda, into the Street Families Rehabilitation Trust. We can go through this. You know, we had Miss Angeline Yamano.
So regionally,
Kiparo.
it's fairly represented.
It is fairly represented. But you see, myself and yourself having our media background, we appreciate that the coverage of the media is based on who is known and prominent as a key principle of coverage on the media. So what is known is the appointments of people like Noah Katanangala, the people like David Wamalili Wanyonyi, Michael Bowen, David Kipukuri-Sang, Zamba Kitonga, and by the way, when you say there is no one in Luo Nyanza, there is Ronald Ostumba chairing the Youth Enterprise Development Fund. You know, let us be fair when we and there is also Dr. Wycliffe Omurwai, who has been appointed in the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Services. Let us be fair when we are criticizing government, so that we have an honest conversation.
Right, Dennis, and part of that critique was not only on the regional, and I think largely was on the age factor, with people just criticizing the fact that many of these leaders are repeat leaders coming from, their first politicians, and then many of them actually being aspiring to get elective positions in the coming elections, and some saying, where is the place of the youth in leadership? Of course, some of those who are mentioned are youth, but just talking about the percentage of inclusion of the youth.
2 weeks ago, the president did major appointments to boards. Out of the 74 appointments he did 2 weeks ago, 64 of those appointments were young people. In the appointments yesterday, and into this, for instance, when you talk about the chairperson of the Kenya Trypanosis Eradication Council, for you to first of all even qualify to hold the conditions to be appointed chairman, you need to hold a doctorate in any medical field.
Right.
And then the other qualification, you need to have served for at least 10 years. These are qualifications done out of the task force. You remember we did a task force on parastatals at one point. So this is what came out, so to be able to change this. So to be appointed that chairperson, you need, for you to even qualify to achieve those 10 years, you need to be of a certain age. You will automatically be of a certain age by that fact. But yesterday, out of the 31 appointments, the youngest, Sharon, the youngest, was 28 years old.
And Dennis, I want to bring in Bob Njagi, who's the Deputy Director of Elections in ODM. He wants to engage you. Bob, please go ahead.
Dennis, how are you?
Not bad. How are you, Bob?
Fine, thank you. I would like to know from you
whether
it is fair or not to have 20% of all appointments coming from one region in central Kenya, vis-a-vis what you call equity. Where is the equity in that?
Coming from?
From one region, because out of the 31 positions, 20% of them come from people from central Kenya. So how can you explain that from a government position?
By the way, in the whole of this list of 31 positions, except Professor Michael Chege, and Mr. James Washira appointed into LabSet, there is no one else from central Kenya. So I don't know where you get your statistics. First get your facts right, then let's have a criticism.
All right.
The list is in public.
All right.
And we even have it here online.
Actually,
I could go through it through my phone right now.
Go through it, please. Because you have it here, just go through it. Because I also have a copy here.
Actually, because we are having that conversation, we can have it as candid as we can.
Yes.
So I'm just trying to access that.
Because I can go through the list.
Actually, if you have it at hand, why not? Yeah.
The first appointment is Philip Zamba Kitonga, who is the chairperson for Council for Legal Education.
Right.
Then we have Ronald Ostumba, who is the chairperson for Youth Enterprise Development Fund. We have Dr. Francis Kipri Sang, who is the chairperson for Betting Control and Licensing Board. Honorable Raphael Tuju, who is the chairperson for Lake Basin Development Authority. Professor Michael Bowen, who is the chairperson for Industrial Development Bank. Major General retired Julius Waweru Karangi, chairperson Kenya Airports Authority. Ms. Deborah Bubi, who is the chairperson of Youth Advisory Board. Honorable Ramadan Saif Kajembe, chairman Kenya Ferry Services. Dr. Rashid Aman, chairperson Kenya National Commission of UNESCO. David Wamalili Wanyonyi, chairperson Kenya Trypanosis Eradication Council. Mr. Mwambu Muriro, chairperson Kenya Utalii College. Engineer Sami Tangus, chairperson Kenya Yearbook Editorial. Dr. Wycliffe Omuruai, chairperson Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service. Engineer David Muthoga, vice chairperson Kenya Medical Training College. Miss Angelina Yamito Siparo, National AIDS Council. Honorable Noah Katana Ngala, Kenya National Library Services. Wilfred Sang, chairperson Postal Corporation of Kenya. Patrick Osero, chairperson Tourism Finance Corporation. Honorable Bifoli Wakoli, chairperson Agricultural Development Corporation. Michael Chege, chairperson NEPAD. Miss Jennifer Shamala, council member NEPAD. Michael Kisilu Mula, council member NEPAD. Lucy Yinda, chairperson Street Families Rehabilitation Trust. Paul Kahumba, chairperson National Museums of Kenya.
Right.
John Mutudo. It goes on.
Dennis, even before you finish that list, I want to confirm this is the same list that you have, Bob?
Yes, we are some, and on my count, I can already count out of 6 out of the 31. 6 out of 30 gives you 20% of the average. So I don't know what Dennis Itumbi is trying to count.
Right. You know, it's good to, I've now even gone through the list which you don't have. I have them in tries and I have the numbers. I don't know where you get 6.
Secondly, can you also tell us how many young people are reflected in this list?
I was reminding Bob that in every appointment, that when it rains,
Yeah.
At times, it doesn't rain the whole country at the same time.
All right,
And we have phases of appointment.
So then this is a matter perhaps of...
That is not in our constitution.
All right, gentlemen.
There is nowhere the constitution states that the rain has to fall for one
that's
to
why
get
I'm
an
saying
appointment.
phases of appointment.
Let's hold that
the
rainy
government
thought.
is always considering everyone. And
Let's hold that rainy thought.
considering everyone.
And Dennis recently, I think in the past week or two, the Star newspaper highlighted that case of the Kenyan embassy in Washington, D.C. that had a similar case. That I think throughout that list, it was a list of people who had appointed to the embassy that are from 2 regions. Yes. And since this matter came to the limelight, what has happened? Because it is a situation that really elicited a lot of reactions.
No, that is very true. That's, I mean, let me tell you, first of all, to be able to judge employment in our embassies, you have to take the entire embassies that Kenya has outside this country and be able to judge. Fair enough. You also should not have one consulate or embassy that has one representation of what would seem like one tribe or people coming from the Kikuyu region and not any other region. And measures are going to be taken about that. You'll appreciate, because it's an embassy outside this country, that there are measures that have to be taken to relocate these people to elsewhere and to be able to balance. So that was a mistake. We admit it as government, and collective measures will be taken.
All right, gentlemen, I am told that we are out of time, and I really wish we had more time, because the matters we are discussing is very important to the nation and to the youth of this public, really, because we want to be part of governance and to understand how things are happening. So thank you very much, Dennis, for calling in and being part of this conversation. And sadly, that is where we have to end without last remarks. But thank you so much for making time to join us. And it is a conversation that we have to continue both on set and outside in an aim of, having a united, not just the nation, but also the youth of the country. So thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Sharon.
And it is at that point that we wind up today's edition of Weekend Express. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Sharon Omanyi. Good morning. Alisema no.